I am 28 male, never expected to be in this situation. I always thought my family had its flaws. Who doesn't? But I never imagined they'd betray me like this. I work as a software engineer, decent salary, not extravagant, but enough to build a future. I've been saving for years. But the real kicker? My parents had a wedding fund for me. Or so they claimed. I only found out it was gone when I finally needed it. It all started when my fiancé and I sat down to plan our wedding. Nothing over the top. Just a well-organized, heartfelt event with close friends and family. My parents had always said they had a wedding fund set aside for me, so I reached out to confirm. That's when my mother got suspiciously quiet over the phone. "Sweetheart," she started hesitantly, "there's something we need to tell you." And then it hit me. The hesitation. The guilt in her voice. They had given it to my younger brother, 24M, for a car. Not just any car, his dream car, a flashy sports car he couldn't afford to maintain even if he tried. A brand new, high-end luxury model that he had absolutely no business owning. I sat there, gripping my phone, stunned. "You what?" My father jumped in, his tone defensive. "Your brother was in a rough place. He needed something to lift his spirits." "He needed what? A car? Instead of me getting married." "He's younger than you," my mother reasoned, like that somehow justified stealing from me. "He has time to build himself up, but he was feeling lost. We wanted to help him get his confidence back." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They had taken money that was meant for my future and handed it to my brother, who had zero financial responsibility, just because he wanted a flashy car. "You do realize that money wasn't yours to give away, right?" I said, my voice dangerously calm. "It was mine." "You don't need it," my father snapped. "You have a good job. You can always save up again." I hung up. I was livid, furious beyond words. But I didn't want to make any rash decisions. I told my fiancée everything, and she was just as furious. "So what now?" she asked. "Do we just let it go?" No, we did not. I wasn't going to let this slide. First, I called my bank to check if any of my accounts had been touched. Thankfully, they hadn't. This was purely my parents giving away money they claimed was set aside for me. It wasn't a legal issue. It was just a staggering act of betrayal. Then, I made a decision. My wedding was still happening, but my parents, they were no longer invited. I sent them a message. "Since you've made it clear that my wedding wasn't as important as my brother's car, you won't have to worry about attending it. I'll figure things out without you." The reaction was immediate. My mother called, crying. My father sent long, furious texts about family and forgiveness. My brother? Silent. He knew he had screwed me over, but he didn't care enough to say anything. At least, not yet. The situation should have ended there. But life has a funny way of coming full circle. The downfall begins. 6 months later, I was deep in wedding planning when my brother came crawling back. Not out of guilt. Oh no, he had other problems. Turns out, the dream car had turned into a financial nightmare. He had no clue about insurance, maintenance, or depreciation. He had splurged on modifications, racked up speeding tickets, and, surprise, lost his job due to his reckless spending habits. Now he was drowning in debt, and the car was at risk of being repossessed. And my parents? They had no more money to bail him out. That's when the real entitlement began. The begging begins. My mother called, voice trembling. "Sweetheart, your brother needs help. The bank is after him, and he could lose everything." "Sounds like a him problem," I said coldly. "Don't be cruel," she sniffled. "Family helps family. You have a good job." I cut her off. "So that's why you suddenly care? You stole from me to fund his stupidity, and now that he's drowning, you want me to clean up the mess? Not happening." "But you owe him," my father interjected in a separate call. "He's your brother. You should want to see him succeed." "Owe him," I repeated, laughing bitterly. "You mean like how he owed me my wedding fund?" Funny how that debt didn't matter. They pushed. They begged. They guilt-tripped. My brother finally called himself, voice low and pitiful. "Look, man, I know you're mad, but I need help." "Sell the car," I said simply. "I can't." "Yes, you can. You just don't want to." "But I'll lose money. That's how debt works." The excuses kept coming. He didn't want to sell it because it was his dream car. He didn't want to work a second job because it was beneath him. He didn't want to downgrade his lifestyle because he was used to living a certain way, entitlement through and through. So I decided to teach them a lesson they wouldn't forget. I was done playing nice. Since they wanted to treat me like a bank, I was going to treat them like debtors. I called my lawyer friend, explained the situation, and he gave me an idea. It wasn't illegal, but it was brutal. I drafted a formal contract, a legally binding loan agreement. If my brother wanted my help, he'd have to sign it. The terms? I'd pay off his car debt in full, but he would owe me every cent back, with interest. If he missed a single payment, I'd take legal action to collect. He had to sell the car immediately and use that money toward the debt before I gave him a dime. I sent the contract to my parents and my brother. Cue the fireworks. The explosion. My father called first, absolutely livid. Are you kidding me? You want your own brother to sign a contract? That's how loans work, I said. Or did you think I'd just hand him free money like you did? This is disgusting. You're treating him like a stranger. I smiled. No, you treated me like a stranger when you stole my wedding fund. Now I'm just playing by your rules. Then my mother chimed in, crying because of course she was crying. You have to be the bigger person. He's your brother. Bigger person? You mean like when you prioritized his dream car over my future? You picked him over me, remember? I'm just returning the favor. Finally, my brother called, and this is where things got really interesting. At first, he tried to act grateful. Man, I really appreciate you helping me out. I cut him off, then signed the contract. Silence. Wait, you actually want me to sign that thing? Obviously, but that's so harsh. Not as harsh as stealing someone's wedding fund, wouldn't you say? Then he snapped. Dude, I'm family. This is messed up. You're treating me like some random dude off the street. That's what happens when you act like a leech, I shot back. Sign it or figure it out yourself. He refused. Threw a tantrum. Told me I was a selfish asshole and that money changes people. I
Laughed. Yeah, it sure does. It turned our parents into thieves and you into a beggar. Click. That was the last time I spoke to him. The fallout was glorious. My brother refused to sign the contract, which meant he was on his own. And predictably, things spiraled. The bank repossessed his precious car. His credit score tanked. He had to move back in with my parents, tail between his legs, because he couldn't afford rent anymore. And my parents? They were furious. Not at him, oh no. Somehow, I was the villain in their eyes. You let this happen to him, my mother wailed over the phone one day. He's your brother. We're supposed to protect each other. I couldn't help but laugh. Protect? Like how you protected me when you stole my wedding fund. She sobbed harder, but I didn't care anymore. I was done being their scapegoat. You picked your favorite, and it backfired, I continued coldly. That's not my problem. Fix it yourselves. And I blocked them. The wedding they missed. A few months later, my wedding day arrived. It was perfect. My fiancé and I had cut down the guest list, focused on what actually mattered, and funny enough, the money we saved by not inviting my parents helped us afford our dream honeymoon. Meanwhile, my parents and brother sat at home, wallowing in their self-made misery. The final nail in the coffin. A year passed. Then one day I got a text from an unknown number. It was my brother. Hey man, can we talk? Curious, I replied. Turns out he wanted a job referral. His reputation was wrecked, his finances were still in ruins, and he thought that, after all of this, I'd help him get hired at my company. I laughed so hard I nearly choked. I didn't even bother responding. I just blocked him again. The takeaway. I learned something valuable from all of this. Blood means nothing when there's no respect. My parents and brother made their choice. They picked their golden child. They stole from me, lied to me, and then had the audacity to beg me to fix their mistakes. I don't regret cutting them off. I don't regret making them face the consequences of their own entitlement. And I definitely don't regret the sweet, sweet satisfaction of watching karma do its job. So, to anyone dealing with entitled family members, just remember, you don't owe them anything. Let them drown in the mess they created. Oh, and if you like this story, subscribe. Unlike my parents, I actually deliver on my promises.